So now that we've officially come to the end of the war, we've covered VE Day and VJ Day as well. Now we've got to look at how exactly all of this is going to affect Europe in the years to come. So we've got to sort of bridge the gap a little bit between World War II and the Cold War, which is what we're going to be getting into next. So we actually start talking about, what we want to do in a treaty and things like that before the war is actually over. We have our first conference in Yalta. The Yalta conference was in February of 1945. So the big three, who are Winston Churchill representing Great Britain, FDR from the United States, and Joseph Stalin from the USSR, they all meet off the coast of the Black Sea to talk about what the plan should be for all of these countries when the war is finally over. So, there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of people that we need to discuss. But by this time, the war isn't even over in Europe yet, but it will be over soon. It's very clear. So we need to have a plan in place. So we do talk about and decide that we want Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania to all have free elections after the war. But Stalin is making really super vague promises about all of this. You can tell that he's not really down for that, and it's understandable because he's the dictator of a communist nation. Free elections isn't exactly something that he would be down for. So Churchill and FDR, though, they don't press him on it, and that's really because they needed the USSR so badly at this point. We're still relying on the USSR to finish off Germany, and then at this point, remember, we don't have a nuclear weapon yet. So we're still going to, in our minds, have to rely on Russia as well to help us defeat Japan finally. So what we don't want is to piss Stalin off and make him just, get mad and leave and pull all of his troops out. So we're just like, okay, we'll talk about it again at our next conference. And the next conference is the Potsdam Conference. Potsdam is in Germany. And we meet in Potsdam in July of 1945. And the big three at this conference is quite a different big three. Obviously, Stalin's an OG here, and he's holding it down still for the Soviet Union. But FDR has since passed away, right? He passed away in April. So Harry Truman is our new president. And Winston Churchill has also come to the end of his time as prime minister. He's not dead or anything. He's just not prime minister anymore. And the new PM of GB is this guy here on the far left, Clement Attlee. So these three meet, and they come up with what they want to do in Europe, especially with Germany, right? What we want to make sure we do is learn from our mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes in the Treaty of Versailles, and what we essentially did was we set up Germany for the Nazis. We made it easy for the Nazis to take power, and we want to make sure that nothing like this happens again. So we ultimately decided to divide Germany up into 4 zones of military occupation, each controlled by a different allied power. One would go to Great Britain, one would go to France, one would go to the Soviet Union, and then one would go to us. We also all agreed to let the USSR collect more reparations than anyone else, since the Soviet Union lost more men than every other allied country put together. They lost more resources. They were attacked on their own land for a long time. The Soviet Union bled a lot during this war, and so we feel like it's only fair that they sort of get the biggest piece of the pie going into this. We also redraw some borders in Poland, cutting it down just a little bit, giving some land back to the USSR, and then we also agree officially that Poland will have free elections. So let's look at those geographical changes a little bit closer. The biggest geographical change after the war is definitely to Germany, seeing it split up into East Germany and West Germany. So West Germany is going to be a combination of the British zone, American zone, and French zone. And all of that will be under a democracy, and they will be using capitalism as their economic structure. East Germany, on the other hand, will be communist since it's controlled by the Soviet Union. And on top of that, just about every other smaller Eastern European country is going to become communist through the influence of the USSR. We're even going to see a communist civil war break out in China. Now, the question is, what do we do about the capital? You see, Berlin is right here, the capital way into the Soviet zone. So what should we do? Should we just let one zone hold the capital? Do we pick different capitals for each zone? Do we choose the capital that's more centrally located? Ultimately, we do decide to keep the capital in Berlin. And here's a blow up of what we do to Berlin. We basically do to Berlin what we did to Germany as a whole. We split Berlin up into 4 occupied zones, one for the Soviet Union, one for Great Britain, one for France, and one for the United States. So to get to the British, basically to get to West Berlin, you have to go through the Soviet occupied zone, which is going to end up causing us some problems in the future, but we'll see how that plays out. One good thing that comes out of all of this is that the crazy imperialistic aggression of Japan and Germany also made everyone realize that imperialism isn't probably the best idea. So slowly over the next 50 years, we're going to be seeing African and Asian countries who had been colonized by the West start to gain a lot of their independence back, which is going to be really important going into the future.